Улыбаемся и машем, да? Скажи привет, hi. Привет. Hello and welcome back to my channel. I am going to be talking about how you can raise bilingual children and specifically how you can teach your babies 2 languages. I'll be talking about Russian and English specifically because that's what the languages that I know, and if you do enjoy the video, please don't forget to like and subscribe so that you can see the progress that Aiden takes on with the language going forward. So the methods that I'm going to be going through are useful not just for Russian and English, and not only just for 2 languages. You can use it for lots of languages. It depends what you're going to be teaching your child and from what age. Usually they say the optimal age is actually to teach them from 0 to 3 years old, but I'll get onto that later. So I plan to explain to you my background, where I was born, what countries I lived in, and how I learned the language. But if you're not interested in that, which is fair enough, and you want to go straight into the juicy bits, and that's the methods of how to teach and raise your children bilingual, yeah, then you can skip. And I can put that number on right now. Cool, so in terms of my background, I was born in Russia. I lived in Russia until just before my first birthday actually, and then we moved to Israel. And then from Israel we moved to England, London specifically, before my 8th birthday. So as you can tell, I was born into a Russian family, and it's interesting because even though I did learn Hebrew, unfortunately I don't remember it since moving to England and learning English. So that's quite interesting because my parents actually said that I had a bit of a shock to the system when I moved from Russia to Israel, in the sense that I repeated and started talking in Russian, so same Russian words, but as soon as I came to Israel I had a bit of a shock in the sense that I stopped talking, probably because there were 2 languages. So even though I learnt Hebrew and I no longer remember it, it's funny that I spent the least amount of time in Russia and yet I know Russian over Hebrew. Okay. Quack, quack. Quack, quack. So the fact that my whole family spoke Russian, I actually know Russian better than Hebrew. And I thought that was quite interesting, but it makes sense when you look at the research to say that, and that's one of the methods that I talk about later on, and that's about the whole family speaking one language so that the children learn that language even though they've got another language elsewhere, so that's usually school. So that's how I learnt Russian. And me and my sister even remember that we continuously used to use 3 languages to talk to each other. And I'll get onto that later on because actually it's not to do with the confusion, but it's to do with what's easiest. I just wanted to say that the reason I'm doing this is because when I was researching, when I was pregnant with Aiden, I found that I didn't see many examples that were real life examples. I've seen research, I saw people talking about it from a scientific point of view. However, I didn't see enough real people talking about how they teach their children basically 2 languages. So I hope that this video helps you to teach your children 2 languages or more. So my son is 7 months old, but I wanted to show you some of the interactions and some of the things that I do in order to teach him 2 languages. I wanted to go through the methods of teaching children, and there are 3 in particular. One I already mentioned, and that was the whole family speaking one language. Something that my dad used to do a lot is tell me and my sister off for speaking English, and basically to tell us to speak Russian at home because that's the language that we use. So another way to teach your children another language is 1 person, 1 language. So what that means is that one individual in the family speaks to their child 1 language, whereas everybody else might speak another language. That is actually the method that I'm using to teach my son. And the reason for that is because my partner is English and he doesn't speak Russian very well. He knows the odd word here or there, but it's not the point. The point is that I can speak Russian fluently, and I'm going to be teaching my son that so that he knows that he has to speak Russian to me, whereas he speaks in English to my husband. I wanted to speak about some of the things that people consider when they do teach children another language. Firstly, they think that it's confusing. As a person who learnt 2 languages, let's say 3 languages, because there's Hebrew as well, even though I forgot it later on, is the fact that I didn't get it confused. Me and my sister used to speak in 3 languages at the same time, but the reason for that wasn't due to confusion, but it was because it was easier. We knew those words and the meanings of them in a way that we could use them in conversation and not get confused at the same time. So we would follow the rules, grammatically even, and speak in 3 languages and understand each other so perfectly. I don't believe that there is any confusion there. So I would disagree with that personally, just due to my own personal experience. The other thing that people think is actually that babies start talking a little bit later than expected, so later than monolingual children do. Research actually suggests otherwise, saying that that's not particularly true. Especially there's a TED talk that I can link down below in the description just to show you that when this was researched, they did not find that that is the case. However, speaking from my own experience, I think I started speaking later. However, I did have another reason for that. As I said, my parents think that I went into a little bit of a language shock when we moved countries. I do also have 2 nieces who are bilingual, and my sister was teaching them in the same way that I am teaching my son now. She was the main person, the main source of Russian in the family, and they did start speaking later, a little bit later than an average, especially the second child. However, there could be other reasons for that, especially if research suggests that that isn't the case. Who knows? However, I am expecting my child to speak or start speaking a little bit later. Cool, so here is how I interact with my child, and here are the methods that you can use to teach your child 2 languages and raise your children bilingual.
Вот мой пингвин. Его ребеночек такой мягкий. Ты его трогаешь? Такой мягкий.
You'll notice here that actually I'm reading an English book, but I'm reading it in Russian, so I'm translating as I go because it's a really simple book, especially as it's for babies, and he seems to absolutely love it.
Да. Мышка. Скажи, мышка. Песенка мышонка. Песенка мышонка. Давай, открываем. Жил-был мышонок, который только и умел, что на гитаре играть, на пеньке плясать и песенку распевать. Какой чудесный день, какой чудесный пень, какой чудесный я. И песенка моя, я. Ладушки, ладушки, где были у бабушки, что мы ели кашу, что мы пили брашку, попили, поели, полетели на головку и сели.
Watching TV is another one. I think it's a great one, even though he's still a little bit too young to, let's say, understand or even watch TV for long periods of time. He can still hear the sounds of the language, which I think is ideal because he can see some of the images for about a minute or 2, and then he can actually hear it all of that time that he actually has his playtime. Due to copyright issues, obviously I couldn't show you the actual video, but this is Ну, погоди.
Чебурашка. А как она?
Ну вот если бы меня взяли в детский сад работать игрушкой, то это было просто бы здорово.
Просто бы здорово, да? Я был когда-то странной игрушкой безымянной.
который в магазине никто не подойдет.
If you loved what you saw and you're going to be using those methods, if you want to see the progress that my son makes, I'd love to have you. Please do subscribe to the channel and you will see the progress that he makes as he grows from 7 months old onwards and see how he progresses with his language. Скажи пока. Bye bye. Bye bye. Скажи пока.